Hey guys, it's Kevin here checking in with you before we get to this special interview, which was recorded live from the WERC conference this year. And I want to give a special shout out to our sponsor for this WERC series, Big Joe Forklifts. I wear their t-shirt, I use their LPT26, and I keep my mini Joey handy here on my desk to help me lift up any heavy notes, any post-it notes that I just can't handle myself. Now, for almost 75 years, Big Joe Forklifts lithium-ion walkie stackers, pallet trucks, and access vehicles have been the standard of quality in factories, warehouses, and DCs across North America. Engineered in Wisconsin, Big Joe is known for their rugged, easy-to-use designs that provide a low-cost alternative to traditional forklifts. And as I mentioned, I personally enjoy my LPT26 for moving pallets. For more product specs and more information, head to BigJoeForklifts.com. That's BigJoeForklifts.com, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Hey guys, it's Kevin with the New Warehouse podcast, and I am on site here at the WERC conference for 2024 in Dallas, and I'm going to be joined by Kurt Spyke, who's the Director of National Accounts at Big Joe Forklifts, and we love Big Joe Forklifts here at the New Warehouse, our good friends. We're also going to be jumping on the stage together as well, but we're going to have our little chat here on the podcast too, so we can share it with the audience out there. So, Kurt, how have you been?
Hey, I'm very well, Kevin. Good morning, and thanks for having me.
Definitely happy to have you here. Happy to talk about Big Joe a little bit and also dive into kind of the current state of material handling. So I guess why don't you give us just a quick little brief overview of Big Joe and what it is you guys do?
Yeah, Big Joe, we are a 73-year-old company. We are soon to be based out of Madison, Wisconsin. September, we're going to be doing the fancy ribbon cutting of our
new facility, right?
Brand new, almost 300,000 square foot facility that will be housing both of our brands, our EP brand, as well as the brand that I represent, Big Joe in North America. So what we do is I wouldn't say as much of a niche player as we are a solutions provider in the material handling industry with smaller products.
Right.
Big Joe, we are the number one manufacturer of Class 3 products on the planet, as I mentioned. Times 3. So we are a very large manufacturer of anything that has a handle on it. We have now expanded our catalog into true Class 1 operating vehicles. So we are investing heavily into the market through our dealer network and through the national account channel on what people perceive as the traditional forklift. We are going all lithium-ion on our new Class 1 offering. So we have a lot of exciting things that are happening right now, not only with our legacy catalog, but also with our new products as well.
Right. Yeah, and I think it's such a great offering. I mean, I've used Big Joe myself too,
nice.
And I definitely love it. But tell us a little bit about, because obviously you have your finger on the pulse of material handling, working for Big Joe. So I guess tell us a little bit about, as we look at the material handling landscape right now, and you mentioned you guys are going full lithium as well. I mean, tell us kind of what's the current state of material handling and what's really top of mind right now.
So it's a very unique time. I would say specifically in the United States for material handling, our market's down. We are seeing a little bit of a slowdown coming off of 22 and 2023, which is okay. I would almost consider it a soft landing. The numbers were so high for those 2 years that it created an any port in the storm environment for a lot of consumers. So what we are seeing now, specifically with us and some of our partners, is giving us a time to look back into research and development and see what is most advantageous for the marketplace. With the insertion of lithium-ion, it is really opening eyes to not only companies that are using Class 4 and 5 product combustion engine, or even companies that are using lead acid. They're now seeing the price of lithium-ion come down to being a lot more palatable financially. And with the freedom that lithium-ion provides, it is eye-opening to so many different, I would say areas that didn't even look at it before because of the fear of going to battery, the maintenance, the cost of that. Now where that's all being kind of wiped out and the safety factor is through the roof. So it's just a very unique time for people to step back and say, okay, it was hot to the touch for a few years, but now we can kind of pump the brakes a little bit and see what truly is best for our organization and our operating practices. It's a time for education, a time for exploration, and we're taking full advantage of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's interesting too because there's so much so many things happening in the market too around, just material handling in general, whether it's, from an automation, robotics standpoint, lots of innovation, technology that we're seeing out there, something I think we could call shiny objects in a sense, right,
Yes.
that are out there. So, but I think, there's a lot of, and then somebody said this the other day I saw, and it was, there's like a lot of noise out there in a sense, right? And, if we look at that, when we really see these things, obviously they catch our attention, but I'm curious your thoughts on, some of these shiny objects, we call them, right? I mean, do they really kind of shine right now where it counts, when it comes to, efficiency and productivity and even cost? I mean, what are your thoughts on that? And, how do we look at that, and how do we kind of maybe cut through a little bit of that noise?
I think the word you use that grabbed my attention is efficiencies.
Yeah.
Companies now are looking to improve efficiencies, and where they are finding that available is in areas where there is repetition. Where you're seeing the same movement over and over and over, and if that movement is paused, it affects many other areas of operation within that organization. So that's where you're seeing the insertion of autonomous offerings from all the different major and minor manufacturers out there that have the ability to sell and promote the autonomous. So what we do at Big Joe is we have a semi-autonomous, not only us, but other manufacturers have this as well. We call it an AMR, an autonomous mobile robot, to where it's not a full AGV, automated guided vehicle. It doesn't need a warehouse management system. It truly doesn't always need even Wi-Fi or a cell signal, but we are able to program it to do these different tasks and set waypoints where it can take a pallet, drop it off, return to the area that you have it assigned to. And so this is a space that a lot of companies are looking at saying, okay, the initial investment, it's not as bad as we thought.
Yeah.
It's really something that we can get into. It's something that's in the budget. Literally what we have is about the same price as a Class 2 reach truck. So it's not like one of these situations where you're going in and you have to integrate with the warehouse management system of an organization. It's a true plug and play. We can have a situation and a brand new customer understand what the opportunity looks like, what their goal is, and have this one piece of equipment up and running in under an hour.
Oh, wow.
And that is unique to us. So we're very proud of that, and we're excited. We're getting into different companies throughout the U.S. and Canada that I would say may have not been available to us and the other companies that are offering these different options now. So it's opening up, it's broadening the view, it's allowing different companies to have a shot at showing this is what we're made of, this is what we have. It's a little bit smarter, a little bit more intelligent of a method that you may not have thought of before, and the financial piece isn't as bad as anticipated either.
Yeah. Interesting. And I think it's interesting, too, how you're saying that's, allowing the penetration into different companies that otherwise, might have not been accessible or been able to I guess, harness this kind of technology and get it into their operation. So I guess along those lines, as we look at, and, if whether it's a director of ops or warehouse manager is looking at, their material handling equipment and trying to evaluate where they are right now, and then evaluate where maybe they need to be or what they need to get to. I mean, what really should they be considering now with so many different options, different technologies going on? I mean, how should they go about that evaluation and really try and figure out what their fleet should look like?
Okay, great question, because I think, and I have thought about this, it's the acceptance of the struggle. Where at in the operation have you had a struggle when you have just accepted that's just the way it's going to be?
Right.
And if you can now take these different opportunities as us, as a solutions provider, and have the ability to bring that in and say, okay, this has been a struggle.
Yeah.
How can we help make this less than what you have to deal with on a daily basis? Something that's less than this. It's a part of your operation with an outside the box, a shiny object that you may not have, see that callback right there?
I like that.
You may not have thought of before.
Yeah.
So when we're able to get in with a new object, a new piece of equipment that may have had a negative connotation because of the dollar amount that people perceive to be, the sale price for it, or too intricate, or the so-and-so will never approve it because it takes so. We have a plug-and-play situation where we can literally go in and say, this has been an issue for you for so long that it's just part of your everyday. What if we took that away? What if we were able to say, we can solve this, and all you have to do is stand back and watch us work, and then we will teach you how to work it. So that's been, I would say, the most exciting thing recently in what we do is to give people the empowerment to better their day-to-day operation, but not change how they do business.
Interesting.
Taking a good situation and making it a little bit better, I think it's an initiative that we take very personal at Big Joe. We don't want to go in and say, you're doing a bad job. No, a lot of these companies are doing a phenomenal job.
Right.
We're not trying to change the process, nor are a lot of other companies. They're just saying, and we're saying as well, how can we make good great? Let's take your good operation and make it great. It's a very humble approach. I think people appreciate that.
Yeah, I think that's a great thing because, I think there is, companies that are doing really good, and then there's companies, they start to grow, right, and they start to get to these levels, and then there's a lot of options out there, right?
Yeah.
So, it's where do we navigate? We've never been to this level within our organization. We're starting to reach, new heights, which is great, right? We're seeing the success, but now how do we make sure that our equipment, our operations are, catching up and staying up to this success and doing that? And I'm curious too. I know one thing about Big Joe too is, talk about a little bit about is bigger really better all the time, right? You think right away, like maybe, I'm scaling, I need to grow, and I just need to go out there and just get, a reach truck, for example. And maybe that's not the right solution at that time, right? And maybe you don't need to go all out in that way. So talk to us about, how do you determine, like, what is the right size to go for, and what's the right equipment in that sense, and is it always better to go bigger?
No, it is not. And I believe what we're fighting is a perception being reality. That's always the uphill battle, is you don't ever want to tell somebody you're thinking the wrong way, because it's not the wrong way. It's just a thought process, and the thought process, the vast majority of time, is an opinion. We would like to come in and say, okay, if we can do something with the same amount of power, same amount of capacity, same amount of this, the same amount of that, for less cost, less maintenance, would you listen to us? Would you like to have that conversation? And the companies that say, if you can do something that's smaller, more efficient, and less of a cost, because if you look at buying an asset in the material handling industry over a 60-month period, 20% of that pie is the acquisition cost. The other 80% is the maintenance and the parts. Over 60, that's a tremendous spend. So if we can gain the audience and explain to them, look, the reason why you buy a 3-wheel electric, or you buy a reach truck, or you buy whatever, majority of the time is because your predecessor bought that and their predecessor bought that.
Yeah.
That's just habitual. And that's a really good way of never getting in trouble, is by doing what somebody else did.
Yeah.
It's a mindset that we like to kind of move off to the side. And, I like to experiment with confirmation bias. Just because that's your opinion, you're going to find a reason to believe what you think. If we can come in and set that aside for a second, it's like, okay, well, let's pretend that's not an option, that reach truck's not an option. How about this? A straddle stacker. You're only operating in this size area. You're only going up this high. You're only picking up this much. Would you like to spend 65% less and have this much less operating cost? Well, yeah, we can do that. It's just a conversation that we need to kind of almost like self-empower to get to the right person, the right audience that's willing to have that conversation, because bigger's not better.
Yeah.
Bigger takes up more room, and bigger takes up more power, and more power usually takes up more maintenance spending. So it's a real domino effect, but at the end of the day, you need what you need, and you have to have what you have to have, and product's going to get moved from point A to point B, and so on and so forth. We're just trying to open up eyes and reconfigure how organizations, when they get a product in, let's better getting it back out the door.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. I think that makes so much sense, and being able to, really consider what is the use case, and I guess in a way, break that habitual cycle, right?
Yes.
And look at things differently, and, from a cost perspective, a maintenance perspective, which is huge, right? Because that's, goes into your TCO, that total cost of ownership over time. And I think it's interesting too. You mentioned the straddle stacker in there, right? Versus traditional reach truck where you would stand on it and ride on it. And talk to us a little bit about kind of that difference in usability from the end user's standpoint. Because if you look at like a full-on reach truck, right? Typically, and I know from my experience as a warehouse manager, when we start to train some people to be reach trucks. Some people were just, very scared of them, rightfully so. I mean, they're huge machines, can be very dangerous. But a straddle stacker, right, I would say is a little more flexible from the user experience. So talk to us about kind of that difference from the user perspective and how that can kind of shift the operation a little bit.
Oh, that's such an amazing point to bring up. I flashed to one of my favorite customers who I'm currently working with, and hopefully I work with for my entire career. You go into one of their distribution facilities. I always refer to it as the industrial ballet.
Oh,
they have
I like that.
end riders and reach trucks and order pickers, like flowing harmoniously with operators that have been doing this job for 10, 15, some even 20 years or more. And so putting them on equipment that you just mentioned, it's second nature.
Yeah.
You can watch, and when I do and I pay attention, I can pick out the newest operator because they're the one they're struggling, they're not as comfortable. There are applications where we cannot fit, we will not fit. We're not going to try, but there are the vast majority when you get away from the industrial ballet and you go into a smaller, less throughput cycle where we absolutely do. Like as you mentioned, it's so a walk behind a class 3 straddle stacker or a class 3 walk behind counterbalance, it is safer to operate. It's easier to use. The learning curve is definitely flattened. Somebody can get behind that piece of equipment and do their job fluidly, effectively, almost immediately. And to an organization that's money.
Yeah.
To be able to move product faster and safer. Safer is the number one goal that any material handling company should focus on. So we want to put our operators who use our equipment in the safest position possible to do their job as best as they possibly can. That's the goal.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that makes such a big difference to have them in a safer position. But I think that learning curve, too, is a huge part as well, because we see, even in the kind of keynote opening session this morning here at work, I mean, one of the mentions was obviously the struggle behind labor, right? And I think, from my experience in the past couple of years, I mean, a reach truck, for example, we keep talking about reach, but I mean, the reach truck driver is one of the hardest to get out there, one of the most expensive, but having somebody and trying to go internally and maybe pulling somebody off a packing station and saying, hey, do you want to, maybe drive some equipment, forklift, operate the material handling equipment? Sometimes, that can be a little bit of a dangerous step in a sense. So when you squash that learning curve, I think that makes a huge difference and, opens up your flexibility within your workforce too a little more and makes that more comfortable. So very interesting stuff. And I'm curious, as we look towards the future around material handling, obviously we're talking about some of the things that are going on right now, but I mean, what do you think is happening that should be on the radar of those decision makers within the next couple years?
Decision making, they're gaining power back. The buyer is gaining power back where the past few years the buyer did not have that. The lead times were so far out, years in some situations.
Oh, yeah.
So now with the ability where companies have inventory, they're going to be able to be more choosy, a little more nitpicky with what they need to hit the specific environments and areas that they need to be fulfilled and satisfied. So I think that's something that's going to be coming up. I think the salespeople in our industry are going to have to start listening a little deeper, a little harder again. I've always been such a fan of the sales process. I'm quite passionate about it, actually.
Yeah.
And I believe that if you lose what we actually do for a living, listening to the customer and filtering the information and providing the best solution, the next couple of years, that is going to be at an elevated state. So it's either a buyer or a seller's market. Right now, we are definitely in a buyer's market, not a seller's market. So the competition is going to be as fierce as it has ever been. And the reps that listen to the end user, the buyer, they're going to be best served. Really kind of finding out what the true application is and getting the right piece of equipment in there, because people have rows and rows and rows of equipment waiting for a good home. So the ones that take the time, they do the job right and thorough, are going to win.
Interesting. So good point for decision makers out there. Is you're kind of in the driver's seat, I
Yes.
guess, literally,
But be
figuratively,
nice.
but be nice, be nice to Kurt. All right.
Yes.
So Kurt, I really appreciate you coming here and joining me here at the table and talking about these topics and giving us some insight into the material handling equipment industry right now and what's going on. So if people are interested in learning more about Big Joe, what's the best way to do that?
www.bigjoeforklifts.com.
All right, great. And we'll definitely put all that information at thenewarehouse.com as well so people can easily find it. So, Kurt, thank you once again for your time today.
Always my pleasure, Kevin. Thank you.
All right. Hey guys, thank you so much for tuning into today's video here on our YouTube channel, The New Warehouse Podcast, and I appreciate you tuning in. If you liked what you saw, make sure you subscribe to our channel, and if you like this video in particular, make sure you like it as well. And if you want to get this great t-shirt that you see in the video behind me, Warehouses Are Sexy, head to warehousesaresexy.com and get your own.